view, the president is not advancing America's national interest. Okay? And let me just give you some examples. One of them's personal. For those of you probably all heard about it, but Vladimir Putin, we now know, floated the possibility that in return for allowing Mueller to interview 11 indicted people for crimes, right? There's an indictment with lots of facts. These are the people that stole the emails in 2016. He said, well, in return for that, we want to interview some people that we think are criminals in America, one of whom was me, right? And just think about how absurd that is. He's listening to this. We are U.S. government officials that Putin is talking about. And President Trump went out to the press conference and he said, I think this is a great idea. This is not a Democrat or Republican thing. I'm sorry, that is not an American thing to say. To throw us under the bus. Okay? They keep getting mulligans, right? So let's try again. And Sarah Sanders tried to get it right the second time. She said, we're still considering this idea. And then they finally got to the we're not going to do it, but she said it was a very sincere idea from Vladimir Putin. Sincere idea? It was the most cynical, crass, ridiculous thing. And our president needs to understand that. But that's not the only thing. They talked about maybe you shouldn't protect one of our NATO allies. And it sounds like our president kind of nodded along to that. It sounds like they discussed a referendum in Ukraine. By the way, who hired Putin and Trump to speak on behalf of Ukrainians? But why? So all of those things, they're all in Putin's interest. And there was not one concrete thing at the end of that meeting that I would say, well, we, America, are better off as a result of that meeting. And that's his job. Okay? He's the commander-in-chief. He's the president of the United States. His job is to advance our interests. That is what you sign up for when you become president. Now, then the question is why? So how do you explain this behavior? And I want to be clear. I actually think the Trump administration's policy towards Russia is pretty good. If you actually look at the rest of the administration, I think they're basically doing the right thing. It's just the guy at the top doesn't agree with it. So, there's only two explanations, in my view. One is that he just hasn't taken the time to think about American interests as opposed to his own personal interests. And he didn't do his homework, right? He said, oh, I know how to handle Putin. I'm going to handle this all. He obviously hadn't read any of his papers. He just winged it. Reminds me of some really overconfident frat boys at Stanford. Oh, I don't need to study for this. I shouldn't have said that. Just anybody. I've seen these students before. Oh, I don't need to study. Oh, my dad was a diplomat. I don't need to do that. And then they get a D, right? That's what it felt like to me. He just didn't do his homework. So that's one explanation. The one I know you want me to speculate on, however, I don't know the answer to. Here's what I do know. I do know that Putin, with people in his country and in Europe, uses money all the time to create leverage. That's a standard operating procedure for Vladimir Putin. And he'll do things like, when I was ambassador, I'll give you an anecdote of how it works. He decreed, while I was there, that if you are a Russian government official, you are no longer allowed to have assets abroad. You have to sell your assets in London and the French Riviera and New York. He made that decree. But then, in individual conversations, he said, okay, Volodya, okay, Igor, okay, Masha, I'll let you do it. You can keep your, nobody else can. The official lines you got to sell. I'll let you keep it. Well, what has just happened there? He's created leverage, and you're dependent and beholden to Vladimir Putin. He does that all the time. I don't know if that happened with the Trump organization and the family, but that's a tactic that I've seen time and time again, and Mueller has to answer that. The second thing I'll say, and I write about this in the book, so I want you to buy the book. The Ritz-Carlton, where Mr. Trump in 2013 stayed, I was ambassador at the time. I've stayed at the Ritz-Carlton. And I was there with President Trump. President Obama, excuse me, in 2009. Thank you. And so that we could have a private conversation in the Ritz-Carlton, we built a submarine-like structure with these walls really thick, not connected to power in any way, shape, or form. We had to crawl in there. There's this guy named David Axelrod, if you know him. He's this big, tall guy, and he scrunched down and to get in there just so we could chat privately, which is to say that if you stay in the Ritz-Carlton, you should assume that everything you do is recorded. Now, I don't know what happened there, but whatever happened there, they have a record of it. Okay, back over here. I know I've been neglecting. Yes?